So we can officially say that this Mets season is a disaster. It can be salvaged, but a couple of things need to happen. Quite a few things. Now, they lost 3 games in Atlanta. So they're now 1-9 in their last 10 games in Atlanta. That is unacceptable, obviously. Now, who's to blame? Now, before we get into that, this is such a happy video. Please subscribe to the Baseball Hut. I have been doing all kinds of stuff here, complaining for the last month about this team. Complaining about certain players on this team. Obviously, Daniel Vogelback has got the bullseye on him from myself. He's an easy target, as you know, but he is part of the problem. The decision-making apparatus within the Mets front office is a mess. And looking at it objectively, Steve Cohen should go in and fire everybody. He should fire Billy Eppler, and because Billy Eppler hired Buck Showalter, Buck should be fired too. Buck has done a good job. He did a good job last year, but this year I was sort of going half and half on it, but then hearing what he said after the game on Thursday, that he was proud of the way the Mets had played against the Braves, I thought that was outrageous. I thought that was completely outrageous what he said, because that is the kind of thing that a losing manager says. A manager that is trying to find moral victories. There are no moral victories in sports. I'm sorry. You are what your record is. It reminds me a lot of Louis Rojas. It reminds me of Jerry Manuel. It reminds me of Jeff Torborg. Losers as managers that really can't get out of their own way. They're sort of flailing. Now, Buck has made some weird decisions. This thing about Vladimir Guerrero pitching to him on Saturday, which is really what led to this 6-game losing streak, really. That is sort of like the domino to fall. That is really the big domino to fall. And then him saying that he's proud of the effort. If you lose, what's there to be proud of? I'm not proud. I'm not proud of the 6 games that they've lost in a row. I'm not proud of the fact that Scherzer has stolen the Mets' money. I'm not proud. And I got numbers here. You know, the Justin Verlander last year had 28 starts last year, gave 12 home runs. He has pitched 7 games for the Mets. He's given up 7 home runs. This is not a team that's built to win. I question the ability to build a winning team with Billy Eppler as general manager. That is really what it's come down to. I would mention last trade season, last deadline, he made a couple of trades that really was supposed to fill a need. The need was at a designated hitter, because they weren't getting a lot of production with Dom Smith and J.D. Davis. They eventually DFA'd Dom or non-tendered him this offseason. But prior to the trade deadline, they traded. There's a couple of trades, as you know. There were 2 trades. There was the Vogelback trade, which they made prior to the trade deadline. They traded Colin Holderman, who had pitched well for the Mets. I did not take notice of it at the time, but seeing what's gone on after, I am a little worried about this guy as general manager, quite frankly. And we've seen what Vogelback has done this year. He's terrible. He's a terrible player. He's a loser. He's a losing player. He cannot win. You can't win with him on your team. But the other trade that has turned out to be kind of a small trade, but it's really a trade, a devastating move, if you look at it. And I'll explain it like this. The Mets traded 3 young pitchers and J.D. Davis for Darren Ruff. Now, Darren Ruff has been a last guy on the bench, but he's built a niche for himself to be a guy that hits left-handed pitching. They traded 3 young pitchers. Nick Zwack, that's his name. I'm not goofing. Carson Seymour, Thomas Sabuki, and these guys are minor league guys. And with Colin Holderman, this is pitching depth that you do not have now this year. So you traded 4 guys plus J.D. Davis for 2 role players, 2 of which did not provide any kind of production. Ruff did nothing for the last 2 months of last year, and they released him in spring training this past year. So for 4 players for Darren Ruff, you got nothing out of it. You gave 4 players for him, and you see J.D. Davis is playing every day for the Giants. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of J.D. Davis. I don't think he can hit good pitching. I think he can hit, but he doesn't hit real high end. Guys that are really, really hard. Really, he's not a guy that's going to hit really great stuff. But he's become an everyday player. And Ruff isn't here. You traded 4 players for Darren Ruff, who has played in Japan. He's been released several times from different organizations. And now, after he got released by the Mets, he went to the Giants. They released him. And now he's with Milwaukee. And they're below 500 in the National League Central, I guess, or around 500. Not much better than the Mets. So he's been bouncing around, and he's still bouncing around. And you traded 3 pitchers that you probably could have used. Guys that you could have had on your 40-man roster. Guys that are in the organization. Now, the only guy that's really pitching well is Carson Seymour. I saw his numbers. He's pitched pretty good. He's got over 40 innings. His ERA is on the 4. The other guys have struggled. Zwack has struggled, and Sabuki has struggled. But that's still depth in your organization. And Colin Hold'em has pitched well after pitching poorly when he got to Pittsburgh, and then he got hurt. So and this is what I've been sort of holding back, is if the Mets get rid of Vogelback, then I'm going to hammer the general manager. But now I'm going to hammer him now. He also is a guy that signed John Curtis before last season to a 2-year deal. He was coming off of Tommy John surgery. He was on the 40-man roster. They put this guy on the 40-man roster for 2 years. He pitched in spring training. He pitched okay, and then he looked terrible in April. The Mets had to send him back to AAA. He pitched so poorly. So you have this sort of, it seems that this thing is a problem with the pitching. Now, to go back a little bit with Eppler. Eppler is a guy that when he was in Anaheim had all kinds of problems bringing in organizational pitching. And I do remember when they hired the new general manager that the first thing he talked about was bringing in young pitchers, or at least organizational guys that can fill needs at AA, AAA, and hopefully they can help them at the major league level. Eppler hasn't done that. He brought in, I guess the end of April or the early May, Dominic Leone, who was released. And he's pitched terrible. He's terrible. He sucks. Quite frankly, I could say sucks, right? I could say that. He sucks. He's mediocre. And who finished out the game last night? Tommy Hunter. Another guy that's pitched in Japan. He's been all over the place. And I know that as a Buck guy, Buck had him in Baltimore. That was a long time ago. That's 10 years ago. I had a bad feeling when he came. I was like, he's going to give up at least a run. Did that ball ever come down from what's his name? From Albies? I don't think that ball's come down yet. Is it headed towards us here in Queens? I don't know. That's a possibility. That's a possibility. But it's those kinds of moves. You can judge a general manager. It is easy to make trades for big players. It's easy no-brainers. It's easy to sign Max Scherzer. It's easy to sign Justin Verlander. Now, you have to, but bringing in bullpen help, working on your bench, those are the moves that could be better or worse depending on doing the evaluating in the front office. And I question this general manager's capability of doing that. I don't think he has that capability after seeing it over the last 2 years. We all know that this team needed another hitter in the offseason. We know that they probably could have improved at the DH spot. I'll throw 2 names out there just for the hell of it. One was just for the DH spot. One was Justin Turner, and the other player was J.D. Martinez. The Mets were connected to all kinds of rumors with J.D. Martinez, but he didn't get traded. In the offseason, there was no talk about the Mets signing him to any kind of contract, and he signed a fairly decent contract with the Dodgers because he's coming off an injury. I know he's got 10 home runs. That's 8 more than Vogelback. That's for damn sure. So his ability to find these small pieces tells you what kind of general manager he is in terms of how he's running this team, how he's running this organization. There was a rumor today about Alexis Diaz and how Alexis Diaz is interested in him. If I were the owner, if I was Steve Cohen, do not let him make this deal. I do not trust this guy. Do not trust this general manager. To see the kind of moves that he's made, in particular with the organizational moves, I'm very concerned about. He was very willing to let Chris. I'm just throwing this out there. You know. He had no problem letting Chris Bassett leave. He had no problem letting Ty Walker leave. Tyler McGill has not improved. And I'll mention some other things. I think that off of what Buck said last night, he probably deserves to be fired. But I also think that other guys on the coaching staff need to go. The hitting coach needs to go. They made a big deal out of him, and he's a disaster. The Mets take too many damn pitches. They look like a totally different team offensively than they were last year. Okay? They don't score runs in the first inning. They're not aggressive as much as they should be. Jeremy Barnes should go. He should be out of here. And I don't think that'll take much for him to be gone. Because remember, 2 years ago, they got rid of Chili Davis. Secondly, Jeremy Hefner has to go first before that. The Mets lead the league in walks. The Mets lead the league in home runs. And that is a terrible combination for a pitching staff. Somebody has to be responsible. Somebody needs to basically skadoosh themselves out of here. And really, he's the first coach that needs to go. And just for the change of it, he needs to get out of here. Somebody is responsible for this disaster. And the first things you need to do is start getting rid of this coaching staff. Them in particular, those two in particular, and the manager. And I would say that they need to fire the general manager. Just get rid of everybody. And I was thinking that, and I'm not one that sort of wants to blow it up, but you have to sort of look at it objectively. I always look at it objectively. Again, I'll say this again. I'm not associated with the team. I'm not associated with the big media. I do my own thing. I spend a lot of time watching the games, studying the games, studying statistics, all that stuff. Okay? I don't want to waste my time watching more bad baseball. And nobody else should either. And you should demand as a fan that something is done here. Steve Cohen must do the right thing and just clean house of this group. Now, there are players on this team that are winning players. Keep our fingers crossed on Pete Alonso, but I think he's going to miss some time with that. Hopefully it's not a bad break that he has in his hand. Hopefully it's just a really bad contusion, but it doesn't look good for Pete. But we want to demand excellence. We want to demand greatness. You're not going to get it by a manager saying the team played well, they played hard, I'm proud of them. That doesn't fly. Either win or you don't win. And they need these games in Atlanta. They needed that second game in Atlanta. And they needed that game last night. They had that game in their hands. They scored enough runs to win the game. But again, the general manager is responsible for all of this. He's responsible for this pitching being so piss poor. And until ownership recognizes that the most important thing is winning and nothing else matters beyond that, they're never going to solve this problem, this institutional issue. And again, I'll say this again, get rid of everybody that was loyal to the Wilpons. Get them the hell out of here. I'm sure they're not helping. Okay? I'm going to tell you that right. That's how I feel. Get them all out of here. All of them. And I would mention that Gary Cohen last night again said the change is going to have to be made. And I'm thinking that the manager. Now you're going to ask, well, who's going to be manager? Who are you going to have as manager? You can't have Eric Chavez because he's part of the problem too. He's the problem too. He's a coach. I'd like to see somebody from the outside to come in. Maybe you give Carlos Beltran the rest of the season. Because he's in the organization. He knows the minor leagues. I would also think about firing the general manager and having somebody else in here to run this team. Who it could be? You want to bring Sandy back? I'm just joking. Oh no, joking, not joking. I know one thing. Sandy won't give up he'll make some interesting deals. Interesting, I mean, but seriously, Um, Buck has to go. The general manager has to go. Some of these veteran players need to get out of here too. Get some talent, get some younger players in here, just for the farm system. Give yourself some organizational depth. And I will say this, and people sort of mention this. I'm tired of Drew Smith. Okay, I'm tired of talking about how great he is. Hey, asshole! I'm gonna say this very clearly. Stop throwing a slider. They can hit it. Their batting average over 400 again. Stop throwing it. Stupid. How stupid is that? Stop throwing it. This really pissed me off. I had a very rough day today here at the baseball lot. Let me tell you, beyond just the thing with the Mets. But again, I'll say this again. Cut it to the chase. Fire Eppler, fire Buck, fire the pitching coach and the hitting coach, and start moving on. I mean, just blow this thing up. They had a shot to get to the World Series last year. They didn't get to it, and now you just got to blow it up, and start doing some big moves in the offseason. That's it. It's as simple as that. And they got to get somebody that's more focused in on bringing organizational pitching in here and do a better job with the farm system and stocking that up. So thank you for watching this video. Rather, live it, Baseball Hut, and you should be livid too. If you're a Mets fan, demand greatness, demand winning, demand excellence. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Put the onus where it needs to be. Don't turn it on yourself. Don't belittle yourself. Put it on ownership. Put it on the front office. And put it on these players. Okay? Don't put it on yourself. Okay? Don't ever do that. Okay? You love the team like I love the team. You want to see the team win. That's all that matters. And that's it. And that's all I have to say. And that's the bottom line. Because the Baseball Hut says so.